Hello everyone. For today, we are going to talk about emotional intelligence and how does it differ with intellectual quotient. Let's talk about that in this discussion. Okay, so first let me begin by talking about the neurobiological basis of emotions, which means that all the emotions that you feel, all the emotions that are triggered, there are parts of the brain that activate whenever you feel those emotions. That's why sometimes we try to associate a certain part of the brain for a certain feeling, for a certain thought, or for a certain emotion. According to Daniel Goleman, all emotions, in essence, are impulse to act, the instant plan for handling life that evolution has instilled in us. So, in this definition, one thing that we learned is that it is an impulse to act. So, it basically gives a signal on what to do. For example, when there is an object that is threatening that is in front of you, your response can be fight, flight, or freeze. That has an evolutionary root, meaning that these emotions are there for a certain reason, and we are not conscious about it now, but they serve a purpose for our ancestors. Particularly, for example, the emotion of fear has allowed our race to survive from the different threats in the world. For example, it allowed us to survive from predators, from animals, so that we'll be able to protect our lives. Now, which part of the brain is in charge of different emotions? Although there are various parts of the brain that are activated whenever we feel certain emotions, one of the most active parts would be the amygdala. Amygdala also helps in memory, but the types of memories that are processed in the amygdala are those that are emotional memories. Hence, the amygdala is also involved in fear as well as in other emotional responses. For example, anxiety, for example, being startled or being threatened, because the amygdala is the center of action, the emotional sentinel that can take control of our actions even before the neocortex could assess what to do. So it tells us what we should do even though the stimulus has not yet been processed thoroughly. So it allows you to identify, for example, that there is a snake in front of you. So from the eyes, that information will go to the relay center or to the thalamus. Then it would also go to the visual cortex, but sometimes it can take a shortcut going directly to the amygdala. That's why sometimes when you encounter an object, particularly an elongated object, you get afraid because you thought that it was a snake. It's because the information took a shortcut from visual thalamus to the amygdala. And when your visual cortex was able to process that information, that's how you realize that it's just a belt and it's not a snake. Okay, so emotional intelligence is the ability to motivate oneself and persist in the face of frustrations, to control impulse, delay gratification, to regulate one's mood, and keep distress from swamping the ability to think, to empathize, and to hope. This is a lot to take in, but let's divide the definition part by part. So the first is to persist in the face of frustrations, meaning if you're emotionally intelligent, you have the capacity to be resilient. You won't easily give up. You will find ways to keep pushing. You will find newer goals to pursue, even though what you're doing has been frustrating for quite some time. Also, you have the ability to control impulses, meaning you won't act impulsively, but rather you know how to take a moment to reflect before doing something. Other than that, you have the ability to delay gratification. Delay of gratification is very important. Would you choose to have something good that you can get something right now? Or would you rather have something grand that you can get something in the future? There was an experiment, the marshmallow experiment, and they found out that children who chose not to eat the marshmallow for a bigger reward that will be given after a few minutes, they were the ones who ended up to be more successful in life. So it pays to learn how to wait, and it pays to be patient in your day-to-day lives. Other than that, it helps us regulate our mood. It helps in our ability to think, to empathize, and to hope. Let's talk about those things in the next few slides. First important sign that you're emotionally intelligent is to know one's emotion or to be self-aware, meaning you should not deny your emotions, you should not be ashamed of your emotions, but rather you should be able to identify those emotions and be self-aware. What are the things that trigger these emotions? So this is about how you feel and what's the thought behind that feeling. Remember our previous discussions? What you think affects the way you feel and the way you behave. Sometimes it would be helpful when we teach our clients about Albert Ellis's ABC framework, which means A stands for activating event, what happened in the environment, and B, what was your belief. So after that event happened, what came into your mind, and C is the consequence. For example, I failed an exam. My belief is that I'm not good enough. So the consequence is that I'm going to hate myself. However, let's change the way we think. Even if you fail the exam, what if you think something like this? This is just a challenge. I'll be able to be successful in the next exam. Look at the new consequence. The consequence is that you will feel competent even though you failed in that exam. Changing the way you feel and being aware about the things that trigger these feelings would be helpful in coping. Hence, that is related to managing emotions. We can control how long emotions would last. It's normal to feel sad, it's normal to feel disappointed, it's normal to feel frustrated, and when you lose someone close to you, it's normal to grieve. However, that will no longer be normal if you have been feeling these emotions for quite some time, and because of those emotions, you can no longer go to work, you can no longer go to school, you can no longer perform your day to day functions. Hence, an emotionally intelligent individual is someone who knows how to manage these emotions so that he or she will remain functional and mentally healthy. If you know how to manage your emotions, you'll be able to effectively deal with difficult things without becoming impaired or dysfunctional. There are various strategies in order to help people to manage their emotions, and that may include relaxation, meditation, or writing about their feelings, journaling, or do engaging in your favorite hobbies. So find ways to channel your emotions so that you will not dwell in that negative emotions to a point that those emotions will not allow you to perform your day-to-day functions. Other than that, you are also high in emotional intelligence if you can motivate yourself. Okay? And one theory that I thought of when I was thinking about motivating oneself is the locus of hope. So basically, this theory about the locus of hope is talking about what are the different pathways or avenues in enhancing our personal level of hope. Okay, because in Western settings, they are very individualistic, meaning if they want to feel hopeful, if they want to feel good, if they want to feel competent, they will look at their own abilities. They will think about their personal characteristics and they would say that I can do it because I know that I work hard for it. However, in our setting here in the Philippines, we are very collectivistic. That's why in motivating ourselves, it's important for us to hear what other people have to say about our capabilities. That's why in the locus of hope theory, it was identified that there are three more sources of hope, and the remaining three are all external. So you don't only get hope from yourself, you also get hope from your family members. So it's important if your family members believe in your abilities, they know that you are capable, and they will support you rather than practice what we call crab mentality. It's important for you to express how you feel to your family members because that's more helpful than you realize, especially when you're encouraging them to do something that they're not so confident about. Other than that, our hope also increase as influenced by our peers. So our friends play a very important role in enhancing our level of hope. So it's important that you are there for your friends when they need you because sometimes they just need someone who will listen to their goals or to their dreams. And sometimes you can find a common ground about your situation. Maybe your stories will inspire your friend that even though you are facing a lot of difficulties, you are staying focused at your goal so that you won't give up on your dreams that easily. Other than that, we also have what we call spiritual locus of hope, meaning as Filipinos, when we are facing different adversities in life, we reach out to God in order for us to feel hopeful about the future, to feel optimistic about the future. Emotionally intelligent individuals also know how to recognize emotions in others. So they know how to empathize. And to empathize means to recognize emotions. So if you know how to recognize your own emotions, then it would be easy for you to recognize what others feel. Empathy is something that we must learn how to cultivate. Because if we are emphatic towards someone, sometimes that's enough to make the person feel accepted. Because sometimes people face different types of adversities, including lack of acceptance from family members. That's why they're looking for empathy. They're looking for acceptance from other sources, such as their friends. To be emphatic, it means that not just to be there for the person, it's also to let the person know that you are trying to understand how he or she is feeling. You are not comparing your circumstances, but rather you are empathizing with him or her, allowing him or her to know that whatever he's feeling, that's normal, especially with his or her circumstances. That would help us not just to establish a good relationship with that person, it would also be helpful to the mental health of your friend. And lastly, emotionally intelligent individuals have the capacity to handle relationships. That can be about organizing groups, so they can have leadership characteristics. So even though they are not leaders, they can show these characteristics in leading their group members. They can also negotiate solutions. So when there are conflicts in the group, typically they can be a negotiator or someone who faces both parties and try to look for a common ground so that these groups can meet halfway. So they don't allow the conflict to go further, but rather they help the parties find a solution to their problem. And they have personal connection with the people around them. For example, as a student, you can have a personal connection with your parents, with your teachers, with your friends. You are not detached, but rather you know how to connect to them. You know how to empathize with them. You are cooperating with them. You know how to socially interact with people. And finally, we have what we call social analysis. And people who are capable of social analysis, they are those who have the capacity to take a step backward, to reflect, to think about their decisions before doing something. So, in case they are in the middle of a conflict, they don't act impulsively, but rather they know how to calm down for a while and try to analyze and evaluate the actions that he or she is going to take. These are some of the manifestations of having a good emotional intelligence. Let's talk about a related concept, and this time we are going to discuss Gardner's multiple intelligence. And according to him, there are various types of intelligence, not just intellectual quotient. We can see that there are various areas in life wherein we can be intelligent or competent. That can be linguistic, ability to learn and understand language. So that can be good for poets, writers, lawyers, politicians, etc. We can also have logical, mathematical for those who are scientists, engineers, accountants, musical for those who are interested in music, for dancers, and for songwriters. We also have bodily kinesthetics, a ability to use one part of the body to solve problems, so that can be good for athletes, dancers, mechanics, and craftspeople. We also have spatial. So you know that there are people who are really good in driving. So they are not just good in driving, they can be good navigators, pilots, architects, even sculptors. We can also have what we call interpersonal. So they know how to connect with people effectively. They can be good psychologists, social workers, teachers, and politicians. We also have intrapersonal. And let's talk about psychologists once again. Remember, when we say intrapersonal, you have the capacity to be aware of your own thoughts, behaviors, and feelings. That can also be evident among clergy or among monks. And lastly, we have what we call naturalistic, or this can apply among those who are biologists, botanists, veterinarians, hunters, and farmers. So do not be frustrated if you are not that gifted academically, because that's not just the only way to measure intelligence. There are different types of intelligence that we take for granted because academic intelligence is so overrated. I hope that this lecture was able to help you realize that you can be intelligent in a number of ways, and your emotional intelligence would be helpful in various aspects of your life, particularly in establishing a good relationship with others and even with yourself. That's it for this discussion. Thank you.